Part 76. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 752. This world clearly belongs to the Liang family, but it is dominated by Yan and refuses to return it. Moreover, the Duke of Yan is so arrogant and refers to him as a waste. This is really too much to bully others. His long-standing wish has been in vain. Thinking of what he has suffered, Liang Qi felt chills in his heart when he saw that Duke Yan was now frowning and speaking treacherous words, but no one dared to argue with him, including himself. Mr. Lu did not expect that his words would make the Duke of Yan so angry. The Yan family held a lot of military power. Although the Lu family later imitated the Yan family, they were not as powerful as the Yan family to resist. The emperor had just been drunk at this time. It was his turn again. He did not dare to refute, his face turned purple, and he only dared to lower his head. On the side, Mr. Fu, who squinted his eyes and pretended to be deaf, shook his head slightly and sighed quietly. His tone showed a hint of helplessness and shrewdness in his turbid old eyes. Finally he closed his eyes and his head shook slightly again. What's more, can such a vulgar fan be worthy of my son? Only the emperor can treat rubbish like a rare pearl. After Yan Kuagong hummed, he pointed at a group of women. Lily watched with cold eyes, looking at the farce in front of her, and sneered in her heart. It turns out that evil people have their own trials and tribulations. When Fu Bibai and others humiliated Lily just now, they were so wanton and happy. It's just that those arrogant people didn't meet anyone more arrogant than them. Now the Duke of Yan got angry in front of everyone. Even though he was humiliated as a vulgar fan, no one dared to speak out to refute. They all blushed with shame and clenched their hands and did not dare to make a sound. Almost all the female relatives present were women from the Fu and Lu families, but the two families were under the strong power of Duke Yan. He couldn't find any trouble at all. When Liang Qi heard this, he was so angry that his heart trembled. Duke Yan's words seemed to break a string of patience in his mind, thinking that the political power he had longed for was far away. Unexpectedly, the Lu family and the Fu family were not as capable as he imagined. He was young and impatient, and he had just endured it. Now, under the disappointment, he could no longer endure the patience and humiliation. Although he was afraid of Duke Yan, but out of anger and resentment, he shook his legs, trembled his lips, raised his head, and stared at Yan Su. The Crown Prince Yan is so wonderful. I want to see what kind of pearl and national beauty is worthy of Crown Prince Yan. As long as Crown Prince Yan likes it, I will give it to you. People compete for their breath, and trees compete for their skin. He really couldn't bear it anymore. Even though they knew that the Yan family was not easy to mess with, the Yan family was really bullying others. Duke Yan was so arrogant that he really deserved death. He meant that Yan Su treated the things that Yan Su didn't like treasures. It was simply intolerable. What could not be tolerated? Liang Qi was so angry that he couldn't bear it anymore. She blushed and puffed out her chest. Yan Su, who had just made a fuss, turned his attention back. A careless look fell on Liang Qi. Liang Qi, who was calm and gentle, wearing the emperor's cloud robe, was now furious and had no grace at all. He was immediately compared to him. Seeing this scene, Liang Qi was even more excited. He was furious and said loudly, I keep my word. Whatever Prince Yan likes, I will give it to you. He emphasized the word gift again, and when using the title that represented the only one in the world, he made his voice louder, as if this was the only way to regain the dignity of the emperor, even if he was under Yan Su's gaze at the moment. The legs were already trembling a little. Give it to me. Yan Su glanced at Liang Qi, and the smile gradually deepened at the corner of his mouth. He stared at Liang Qi, with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. I can take what I want. Do you need to give it to me? These words were like adding a pinch of salt to the emperor's wound. The somewhat smug smile on the emperor's face suddenly froze. His cheek muscles twitched and he stared at Yan Su resentfully, but Yan Su didn't care at all. Ignoring him, he turned to look at Lily, and then walked towards Liang Qi. He was tall, and every step he took to approach the emperor made Liang Qi's momentum fade a little. It wasn't big, but it was very fast when he arrived in front of Liang Qi. In front of him, Liang Qi was half a head shorter and had no choice but to raise his head to stare at him. Yan Su's expression was not cold and serious, but the gaze in his eyes made people dare not look directly at him. When Liang Qi saw him, cold sweat broke out on his back. When he walked in again, Liang Qi involuntarily took 2 steps back. There was still an eunuch standing behind him. As he retreated, he bumped into the eunuch. The body he had been holding onto was about to slide down. The eunuch quickly stretched out his hand to support Liang Qi. Liang Qi weakly collapsed on the chamberlain. The color is fierce and the heart is full. Be bold. I don't need you to give me what I want, but I like your intention very much. Seeing the emperor's frightened look, Yan Su curled his lips and smiled. In that case, I'll give you a gift too. No one knew what kind of medicine he was selling in the gourd. Duke Yan also raised his eyebrows in surprise. He stared at his son with interest. The emperor was dripping with cold sweat and his legs were shaking like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. Yan Su pointed with his backhand at the group of quiet women from the Fu and Lu families who dared not say anything, and said in a calm manner, "Whoever you like will be yours tonight." Among the women in the Fu and Lu families, in addition to the unmarried daughters, there are also elderly and even married women such as Mrs. Fu and Mrs. Lu. After hearing Yan Su's words, a group of people, the woman's face turned red and she bit her lips tightly. She scolded the arrogant Yan father and son in her heart, but she did not dare to make a sound. Absurd, Liang Qi heard Yan Su's words. For some reason, he should be afraid and resentful, but inexplicably, he felt a bit of joy and desire in his heart. His eyes subconsciously fell behind Mrs. Lu. Soon, the resentment and fear in his heart towards the Yan family and his son suppressed the dirty thoughts in his mind. He reluctantly drank. Yan Su sneered and took out the handkerchief from his sleeve. Zi Li. I will choose for you. In my opinion, Mrs. Lu Shizi is very intelligent and has a good heart. The emperor likes the method of playing she proposed, which shows that you two have the same interests. Although Mrs. Lu Shizi is married, although she is no longer clean, but the charm is still there. If the emperor likes it, how about I let the Lu family part with it for you? After he finished speaking, he wiped his hands with the handkerchief. His fingers were slender and clean, with clear knuckles and no dirt on them, but he still wiped them carefully before throwing the handkerchief away. When the handkerchief hit Liang Qi, it floated down again, and landed just in front of Mr. Lu Ho, who was standing next to Liang Qi. Mr. Lu took half a step back, and the smile lines at the corners of Yan Su's mouth became lighter, and she said softly, "Pick it up." He had never asked Lily to pick up something, but before, a woman who thought she was arrogant after marrying the Lu family dared to let Lily pick things up. Even Mr. Lu could see the trick. Yan Su naturally. It can also be seen that the daughter-in-law of the Lu family dares to humiliate others, and now he is going to take the situation back from Mr. Lu. Although Yan Su's tone was not serious, he still gave the order, and now he stared coldly at Mr. Lu. At this moment, Mr. Lu felt what Liang Qi had felt before, and he had murderous intention in his heart. Just seeing Yan Su's cold eyes, and then seeing the sneering face of Duke Yan on the side, these two father and son are as arrogant as each other. Yan Su, a boy who didn't deserve to die, dared to humiliate him like this, but now he has to endure it because the Yan family is still young. Mr. Lu was filled with hatred, but with a smile on his face, he endured his anger and picked up the veil. At this moment, Fu Bibai, who had been called out by Yan Su, heard a buzzing sound in her ears, as if her mind was empty. She heard Yan Su saying that she was not clean, and she heard that Yan Su was going to send her away. For Liang Qi, Yan Su is determined to ruin her life. Not to mention that she is married now. If she has a relationship with the emperor again, it will force her to die. Even if she is not married, she will never return to the palace in this life, not to mention what Yan Su said today. Even if she and the emperor were innocent, after looking back, Prince Lu would definitely feel worried. The Lu family would definitely blame her for causing trouble, and his peaceful and happy life might be broken. Fu Bibai's lips were trembling so much, she bit the tip of her tongue. She was a time-traveling girl. She was reborn not to repeat the tragedy of her previous life. She now has children and a husband. She cares about this world. Others are afraid of the Yan family, but she don't be afraid. If she takes a step back, there will be a cliff behind her. Young Master Yan is not right. I am the noble concubine of the Xiaoao Ho mansion, how can I be humiliated like this? If the crown prince does not take back what I just said today, I would rather die to prove my innocence. Fu Bibain was trembling all over and clenched his teeth. Shouted such a sentence. In fact, although Liang Qi hated Yan Su and hated himself for being so suppressed by him in front of him, he was still a little excited when he heard that he wanted to give Fu Bibai to him. No one knew that when he was young, he had admired Fu Bibai, and his longing for her made her heart ache. When he was young, his heart had already fallen on Fu Bibai, and he could no longer move away. If he could have a romantic relationship with her, he would be satisfied in this life. But when he heard her say that she would rather die than be with him, he woke up again as if someone poured cold water on his head. When Yan Su heard Fu Banian's words, he sneered and took out a dagger from his waist without saying anything. Back then, the late emperor was forced by Duke Yan to agree that he was qualified to bring weapons into the palace. Now as soon as he took out the dagger, Liang Qi's face changed with fright. He was deeply afraid that he was going to do something bad to him. He was so frightened that his face turned blue and his legs were shaking. His throat was dry and he couldn't shout a word, but when he saw Yan Su, throwing the dagger towards Fu Bibain, Wen Sheng shouted. Then go to hell. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 753. At that moment, Yan Su spoke calmly, and even had a gentle smile on his handsome face, but there was no warmth in his eyes. He stared at the person calmly with the corner of his mouth curled up. Fu Bibai did not expect to get such an answer. The whole person was stunned. When the dagger fell to the ground, it made a loud sound. Liang Qi's trembling eyes felt that when he saw Yan Su throwing the dagger out instead of aiming it at him, his chest was filled with tension and suffocation. There was some pain, and the people around him were chilling. Queen Lu and others quickly lowered their heads, not daring to look at Fu Banian. Mrs. Liu's legs were shaking violently. The Yan family and his son were too arrogant now. Such treacherous officials and thieves insulted the Lu family in public. Unfortunately, no one could do anything about him. There was a blank in Fu Bibai's mind. After her rebirth, she lived a low-key life. From the time she time-traveled, she was never as high-profile as other time-traveling women. She neither plagiarized the ancient poems of her predecessors nor did anything out of the ordinary. After her rebirth, she became even more low-key. She is cautious in her words and deeds. Mr. Fu and Ms. Fu used to praise her for her good vision, stable and smart temperament, and a strong temper that is not as outgoing as girls. She is really a rare and outstanding candidate. She has been praised a lot, and her face, although she didn't dare to show her arrogance, Fu Banian actually felt that she was different from Fu Beihi and others. Even though she never said this, she never compared herself with the ignorant and backward ancients. In fact, she didn't pay attention to these people at all. But even though she was praised for her quick wit, she couldn't think of any way to deal with such a thing. If she had just retreated in order to advance, now she would be defeated by Yan Su. Originally, Fu Bibai thought when you say you want to die, it's usually to avoid killing others. If others didn't apologize, they would definitely pretend not to hear what she said, and the matter would be settled, but Yan Su was so domineering. He even dared to walk around with weapons in the palace, and now he wanted her to commit suicide. She died young when she traveled through time in her first life, and was reborn in her second life because she didn't want to be with the emperor and was plotted against by the women in the palace. She has no worries in this world. Although she is unwilling to die, there are no relatives here for her to miss. The most death for her is to make her a little unwilling and wants those who framed her to get retribution. But now it was different. She married Prince Lu, and her life finally got better and better. She has her own children and her life is so good now. Why should she die? Just because God is willing to give her 2 chances does not mean that God is willing to give her a 3rd chance. Even if God is to give her a chance, what will happen to the children she leaves behind if she dies? She was really going to die. Lu Shiza was so young that he would definitely marry a second wife. Her children would still be so young when the time came. How could she bear to leave them behind? Saying she wanted to die was just to show her attitude, but Yan Su really forced her to die. Fu Bibai was being held on fire at this time. She, who had always been praised for her stability, magnanimity, and success in the past, was so confused at this time that she could not do anything at all. No action was taken. The man who told her to die in a gentle voice was staring at her with a smile, his expression elegant and indifferent, as if the harsh words just now did not come from his mouth. Since you don't want to die, who will show you what you say? Yan Su's eyes were like glass beads. He glanced at Lily, who was silent and curled up his lips slightly, then lazily said, "Pick up the dagger for me." The dagger happened to be thrown in the direction of Fu Banian by Yan Su. The girls were stunned, and Fu Bibain struggled in his heart. She could imagine that if she had not died today, her life would have plummeted in the future, but if she had died, how could she be willing to do so? She hesitated and struggled for a long time. When Yansu asked someone to pick up the dagger, she stood motionless, as if this attitude showed her unwillingness. Mrs. Lu was deeply afraid that she would displease Yansu again and cause trouble for the Lu family. Her fingernails dug into her flesh. She thought that her husband had just picked up things for Yansu. If Fu Bibai refused to pick them up now, really pushed Yansu into a panic, he dared to touch the emperor, let alone a member of the Lu family. While scolding Fu Bibai, she endured the humiliation and went to pick it up. What big thing do women know? It's just long hair. She is short-sighted. The prince does not need to get angry with her. She is timid and cannot stand being scared. Yan Su rubbed her fingers on the jade belt around her waist. After hearing what she said, she waited until Mrs. Lu picked up the dagger and then said gently, "If you are too timid, you will not be disemboweled. Mrs. Lu's words will not count. I will give this dagger to the Lu family so that you can remember the words of being careful in your words and deeds." These words made Mr. Lu Ho's face turn red. He shook his body twice and felt like vomiting blood. However, he still bent down and thanked him. When Mr. Lu straightened up, Duke Yan looked at it. Such a good show made the corners of his mouth curl up. There was such an unexpected incident today. The emperor was so frightened by Yan Su that he was so frightened that cold sweat broke out on his back. The dragon robe inside was soaked. His legs were so weak that he had to rely on the eunuchs to support him. It's just that he didn't fall down. Duke Yan had seen so many so-called noble girls that he really couldn't bring himself to cheer up, so he walked away. When the Yan family and his son left, the remaining people had just tightened their spirits. At this time, with his arms trembling, he didn't have any thoughts about having another dinner party. Everyone dispersed with gloomy faces. Old Mrs. Fu, who seemed to be asleep just now, waited until Duke Yan left and Emperor Liang Qi had someone carry him back. Opening his eyelids, he turned around to talk to Mr. Lu, but saw Mr. Lu staring at him fiercely. Master Fu has indeed raised a good granddaughter. Fu Bibai was a scourge. She seemed to be a good person at first, but she didn't expect that she would cause such a big trouble to the Lu family today. Mr. Lu was cunning and thought that she was a good granddaughter. Did Mrs. Fu deliberately want to borrow Fu Bai's hand, pretending to cooperate with the Fu family, and then borrow a knife to kill people, so that the Yan family would take the blame for the Lu family? When the time comes, the Lu family will be the leader, and the Fu family will hide behind by accumulating power. Wouldn't it mean that you're getting a huge advantage right off the bat? Otherwise, how could it be possible that the person who caused trouble today was a member of the Fu family, but in the end it was a member of the Lu family who was unlucky? Thinking that despite his age, he would be slapped in the face by that yellow-haired boy from Yansu, Mr. Lu looked at the Fu family with increasingly ugly expressions. He snorted coldly. When Prince Lu wanted to step forward to help him, he flicked his sleeves and glared at his son hatefully, which obviously made the Lu family angry. As soon as the Lu family left, Fu Bibai felt bitter in his heart but couldn't express it, leaving the Fu family alone in the palace. Lily came out today to see such a farce. She originally wanted to build a relationship with the Fu family, but when she saw Mrs. Fu that face, and seeing Mrs. Fu's dislike for her, she also gave up her thoughts. Instead of using the Fu family, it would be better to negotiate terms with Yansu. Although Yansu seemed much more dangerous, today she really seeing that the status of the Yan family is much more than just being able to be ranked alongside the Fu and Lu families as shown in the plot by Lily Fu. She quietly led Ruolan away. After Mrs. Fu waited for the Lu family to leave, his eyes turned around the venue. He didn't see Lily, and he frowned. When Mrs. Fu stepped forward to hold his hand worriedly, he just shook his head and said no more. The Fu family was quietly led out of the palace gate by the palace maid. "Master, why didn't you find the Fu family? Lily missed such a good opportunity just now. Ruolan has been serving her these days, and Lily's thoughts have not been hidden from her. Ruolan was sent here by Yansu. People are not simple, and they can naturally guess Lily's thoughts. The palace has not yet been locked, and there are a few old lanterns hanging under the cold palace corridor. When the evening breeze blows, the lanterns sway violently, and the firelight in the corridor also dims and brightens. Lily is there." There were a few steps to go up to the entrance of the side hall. Ruolan was holding a lantern from behind and saw Lily holding up her skirt and walking up the steps step by step. When she heard her words, Lily turned her face halfway. "The Fu family, it's useless." These words were meaningless. No matter how smart Ruolan was, she couldn't catch it, but someone in the palace heard it. There was light in the palace, and Yansu, who had just left the palace, was lying on her bed, playing with a jade pendant in her hand. When Ruolan saw the light, she excused herself to get hot water and cleverly avoided it. "Come here." Yansu didn't even raise his head when he heard the footsteps. He was wearing a soft silver robe. The robe that he wore during today's dinner had been taken off and thrown aside. His waist was only loosely tied with a ribbon. He was bundled up and lying on the lily bed, as if he had returned to his own home. He did not have an extraordinary aura, but he had a sense of grace and ease. Lily walked towards him. Yansu waved to her. Lily sat in front of the pedal, and then he raised his eyelids, moved his body, and motioned for her to stretch out his hand. The jade pendant that still had his warmth after being played with by him was put into Lily's palm. He pinched Lily's fingers and asked her to hold the jade pendant tightly without letting go. "You are very brave. Why are you so good today?" "When I saw him for the first time, I knew how to ask him for terms. At that time, I even dared to joke with him and ask him for the emperor's favor." Although she was not so hateful that everyone was afraid, but someone as bold as her, it was rare, but people who dared to talk to her like that back then were asked to pick up the handkerchief today, and she actually picked it up seriously. Yansu's eyelids drooped again. "I said I would give you some candles that day, do you still remember?" Lily was wrapped in his palm. His palm was slender and warm, but somehow, being caught by him made Lily feel chilled. She subconsciously wanted to pull her hand back by pulling her hair, but Yansu did not. He didn't let go. Although his expression was gentle, his clenched palm held a firm strength. Lily tried hard but could not pull her hand back. There was a warm smile on the corner of his mouth. Such a person looked like Lan was like a gentleman, but in fact she had the most perseverance. She couldn't pull back her hand, so she had to let Yansu hold her tightly and nodded. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 754. Why can't you remember? When he came to his palace for the first time, Lily was suspicious and deliberately cut off the candles to test his attitude. He said that he would send candles. Later, Lily tested him again and almost made him unhappy. After he left, he not only sent candles, but also Rulan. From then on, her palace never lacked these items, and the things that had been withheld were also returned. At this moment, Yansu was inexplicable. When this matter was brought up, Lily was wary, but she pretended to have a puzzled look on her face. I remember, but I didn't have time to thank the prince for taking care of me later. It's not that she didn't have the opportunity to thank Yansu, but Yansu was very dangerous and difficult to get close to. As the saying goes, dogs that bite people usually don't bark. Like Liang Qi looked fierce with his teeth and claws, but in fact he was vulnerable to a blow. However, a quiet one like Yansu could kill people with his bite. She didn't want to have anything to do with Yansu, so she kept pretending not to know. Unexpectedly, Yansu, today we will pick up this old account again. When Yansu heard this, the smile lines at the corners of his mouth deepened. That day you said you wanted the emperor's favor, and I agreed. After he said this, he grabbed Lily's hand and gently pulled her up. Different from the past when Yansu just walked into the palace and left, this time he didn't leave, but he didn't do anything either. Today Yansu humiliated Liang Qi and the Lu family, but it wasn't all an accident. At first it seemed that he was doing something for him. It was like venting his anger, but it had profound meaning when he thought about it later. These shrewd people all had 18 thoughts in their minds. While Lily was still wondering what he meant by his words, Yansu fell asleep quietly. Lily was not the only one who didn't sleep that night, after the Lu family left the palace. Once Mr. Lu got on the carriage, his expression became ferocious. He resisted the urge to get angry and went all the way back to his house. When he summoned his son and his old wife into the study with a sullen face, he couldn't help but cursed loudly. He thought of the Fu families standing by and watching today, and also thought of the Yan family's father and son's targeting of him. This made Lu Haoyi inexplicably nervous. He was afraid that the Yan family wanted to attack the Lu family. The emperor was obviously unreliable, and the emperor still wanted to rely on him. And the Fu family's performance today made Lu Haoyi even more scared. If something really happened, if the Yan family wanted to attack him, then the Fu family would be in an emergency. It's not bad without adding insult to injury. It's definitely impossible for the Fu family to be in the same boat as the Lu family. Mr. Lu thought for a long time and said to his son with a gloomy face, Fu Bibai is a scourge. We can't keep such a person in the Lu family. If the trouble she caused to the Fu family today was unintentional, it proves that she is as stupid as a pig. If it was intentional, it would be even more terrifying. It proves the ambition of the Fu family. Mr. Lu now wants to divert trouble to the east. He is afraid that Yan Kuagong and his son will attack him. Today, Yan Su said that he would give Fu Bibai to the emperor. No matter what, Fu's reputation has been tarnished for 100 years. Such a woman is no longer worthy of being the crown prince of the Lu family, so she might as well go with the flow. Give her a fake death. Just send her to the palace. Anyway, the emperor has more than one trouble now. Even if there is one more, the situation cannot be worse, but in this way, the reputation of the Lu family can be preserved. On the surface, it was told that Fu Bibai committed suicide because he could not bear the humiliation, but at least he kept his reputation. Secondly, he can use this move to show weakness to the Yan family and prove that the Lu family is willing to obey the Yan family's words. He only hopes that the Yan family will not attack the Lu family and give the Lu family more chance to breathe. Hearing this, Prince Lu didn't know his father's plan, and his face turned pale. He is a man. Although he knows that Lu Haoi's actions are for the sake of the Lu family, he can give up his woman to others. He doesn't want to be such an incompetent and cowardly man. In addition, Fu Bibain is indeed very beautiful and respectful to him. Huan Xian had given birth to 2 sons and a daughter for herself, and he was unwilling to let him go. He didn't want to be the ready-made turtle bastard, even if the other party was the emperor, especially such an emperor. It was really aggrieved. Father. He struggled for a moment and said what he was thinking. When Mr. Lu heard this, he couldn't help but sneered, "It's worthless. A woman will make you stagger around. If you die, no matter how beautiful you are, you can't enjoy the 2 ounces of meat on your crotch without moving. Don't you understand the ambition of the Fu family? The emperor originally wanted the throne and had a crush on Fu Bai, but he could bear to give it up. How can you now? The love between son and daughter has grown." The former Prince Lu didn't know that the emperor liked Fu Bibai, and he didn't know if it was because his wife was loved by the emperor and Liang Qi couldn't love her. Therefore, Prince Lu felt that Fu Bibai was precious, and she was quite fond of her. He had the means and became more and more doting on her after marriage. When he heard his father break his words, he fell silent. A person who is not ruthless will never become a great weapon, and a person who is not poisonous will not be a husband. Today, I only blame Fu Bibain for not having done this and caused the disaster of Yansu. I think of my own life, the wealth and glory of the Lu family, and the enemies of the past. In the Fu family, Prince Lu did not say anything anymore. Palace Lily couldn't sleep much that night. Yansu's actions today seemed to be to stand up for her, but in fact they were sowing discord between the Fu and Lu families. As royalists, these 2 families have always been fighting with the Yan family. The plot, it seems that the 3 families are fighting fiercely, and they are evenly matched for a while. I don't know why Yansu wants to break this balance today, but it is conceivable that his actions caused an uproar. It seems that the country of the Zhou dynasty will be in chaos. But she is just a disgraced nobleman in the Zhou harem. These power struggles have nothing to do with her. All she wants is the emperor's favor, and she has completed the task given to her by the original owner. She doesn't want to care about who gains power and wins. Lily slowly fell asleep when it was getting dark, and when she woke up again, the sky outside was already bright. Master, the eldest concubine of the Lu family is dead. Yansu, who was lying next to him, was long gone, but the faint aura like ambergris on his body remained. Rulan held a basin filled with hot water and drank it. When Pa Zi entered the palace, he broke the news. She didn't mention Yansu's stay in Lily Palace last night, and there was no surprise on her face. She obviously knew it in her heart. When Lily heard this, she laughed. It seems that the palace there will be another concubine. Yesterday, Fu Bibai was fine, but today there was news that she had died. Even if she was suffering from an emergency, she would not die so quickly. Yansu humiliated the emperor and the Lu family last night. Now Lily understood. He broke the superficial balance. It is estimated that the next step should be a big move. The Lu family was humiliated like that yesterday, and Fu Bibai was again. Yansu opened his mouth and pointed out that if she were to die, the Lu family would not allow her to live. Yesterday, the Yan family and his son only targeted the Lu family, but did not touch the Fu family. The Lu family would be very upset after returning. The smarter people are, the easier it is for them to be smart. If the Lu family thinks about things, it will be difficult for Fu Bibai to survive. The Lu family has offended the Yan family because of their loyalty to the emperor earlier, so naturally they don't dare to think about it now. The Fu family is also offended. As long as they don't completely break up, the Lu family will not dare to really let Fu Bai die and anger the Fu family. In this way, Fu Bai will die but cannot really die. Yesterday, Yan Su humiliated Liang Qi and asked him to order Fu Bibai to serve him for one night. In order to please Yan Su, the Lu family would definitely send Fu Bibai to the palace. In this way, the Lu family can maintain their reputation and please Yan Su without offending the Fu family, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Moreover, Emperor Liang Qi has been admiring Fu for hundreds of years, and the Lu family is in his favor. Last night, Liang Qi was raped by the Yan family and his son. He was humiliated in front of him, and the Lu and Fu families did not dare to speak out for him. He would definitely forget some of the hatred. In the future, if the emperor gains power one day, because the Lu family took the initiative to offer their beauty, Liang Qi they would also agree with them. If the emperor was as useless as the late emperor and still had no power, then it would just be a loss of a woman, which would have no impact on the Lu family. Fu Bibai had a child in the hands of the Lu family as a hostage, so she had to do things for the Lu family and did not dare to do anything. The Lu family's old fox's abacus was rattling, and he only laughed at Fu Bibai, thinking that she is a modern time-traveling woman, but she actually doesn't know that in the hearts of these ancient people whom she looks down upon, every word she casually says has countless meanings. It's a pity that Fu Bibai, after his rebirth, tried his best to change the fate of being sent to the palace in his previous life. Unexpectedly, he was already married and had children. He thought he was safe, but at the critical moment, what the family wanted to give up was her, going around and around in circles. She would eventually return to the palace, and she didn't know what Fu Banian felt in his heart. Lily guessed the thoughts in the minds of the Lu family. She didn't want to worry about Yan Su making any big moves. What she was worried about now was that Liang Qi had been asking for Fu Balian and couldn't get it. He had found Fu Balian as a substitute before, but now if she really gets the beauty, if she wants to be favored by the emperor, it will be more difficult to fulfill the original owner's wish. However, there must be a road to the mountain. As long as she saves her life, there is always a way to complete the task. When Rulan heard Lily's words, the hand holding the basin shook. She glanced at Lily in surprise. After a while, she gritted her teeth and whispered. The emperor suffered from chills yesterday and developed a high fever at night and called a doctor. In order to calm down the shock, the Lu family found a person from the Lu family who matched the emperor's birth date to come to the palace. He attended his bed last night. Hearing this, Lily couldn't hold back, covered her mouth and started laughing. Living for a long time has always seen more interesting things. Lily thought of Fu Bibai's face last night, and now she wanted to see the expression on her face. After finishing tidying up, I originally thought that I would have nothing to do today. Unexpectedly, in the deep palace where no one has ever set foot, there would be rare guests today. An aunt in her 30s with a neat bun came with a smile. It was said that Mrs. Yunhua, who was new to the palace, had an old relationship with Fu Beihe and invited her to sit in the palace. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 755. There was no Mrs. Yunhua in the palace originally. Mrs. Lu Shiza died last night, and today there is an extra Mrs. Yunhua in the palace. Lily wanted to laugh in her heart. Fu's expression must have been that it took 100 years for him to steal chickens but not lose rice. It looked very good. She shook the hem of her skirt and stood up. Yesterday, Liang Qi was so frightened by Yan Su that he endured the humiliation of the Yan family and his son. The moment Yan Su took out the dagger, he broke out in a cold sweat. As soon as the Yan family and his son left, he couldn't walk anymore, and it was 2 sturdy eunuchs who carried him back. but in the evening he saw the beauty that the Lu family had brought into the palace. Fu Bibai was the one he had always kept in his heart since he was a boy. Sweet dream, after being stimulated last night, he was carried back to the palace. Although he had a high fever, when he saw Fu Bibai, who was brought into the palace by the Lu family, he couldn't help it. He took the secret red pill in the palace and swallowed it. Then Fu will be blessed for 100 years. When Fu Bibai woke up early in the morning, the rice had become cooking and the white walls were stained. At that time, she wanted to die. The maids restrained her because the emperor had said that if Fu Bibai had any accidents, she would have to serve as a waiter. The palace people pay compensation for the burial. Although Liang Qi cannot control the political power of the great Zhou dynasty now, he still has some power in the 3/3 of the harem. In addition, Fu Bibai's special status, even if it is not for Liang Qi's sake, it is seeing that Fu Bibai was brought to the palace at a happy hour, he could not let her die the next day. Therefore, after a lot of trouble, Fu Bibai calmed down after being furious. Although he was in pain and wanted to die, he thought that his death was the result of his death. She is successful, and then she thinks that the 3 children she left behind are still in the hands of the Lu family. If she dies, the fate of her children in the future can be imagined. More importantly, she endured this catastrophe. If her enemy had not died, she would have died first. She was unwilling to give in. Even if she wanted to die, she would send these people who ruined her life to hell. When Beihe was led to Fu Bibai's palace by the palace servants, she sat in front of the mirror with her hair disheveled. It was early in the morning, but she had not combed her hair or washed her face. Her appearance was reflected in the mirror. Fu Bibai, who did not apply makeup, was astonishingly beautiful. She was wearing a pink dress, a light pink tube top on her upper body, and outer cover. In Xiangfei's gauze-colored gown, her arms are slightly exposed. It reveals a bit of charm and sexiness. She sat motionless, holding a comb in her hand to comb her long satin-like hair. The hem of her skirt fell to the ground like a blooming flower. In the morning, the people in the palace even watched Fu Bibai get angry. Was so frightened by her that when she calmed down and stopped screaming, she asked to see Lily. The people in the palace immediately called Lily over to her, hoping that Fu Banian would go as he wished, stop being stubborn, and obey the emperor in the future. Her life would be better, and everyone could breathe a sigh of relief. Sandalwood was still burning in the bedroom, as if the ambiguous atmosphere had not completely faded away at this moment. When Lily came in, her eyes met Fu Bibai's face in the mirror. Her face was pale and her lips had lost their vermilion color. A pair of big eyes were red and bloodshot. Showing a bit of ruthlessness, she met Lily's eyes and looked at each other for a while. He laughed softly. She grasped the grate with such force that the veins on the back of her hand were about to jump. After a while, her eyelids drooped. Sourness welled up in her eyes, and moisture suddenly filled her eyes. She would not cry in front of these beasts who had harmed her. She wanted to make Lily cry, she wanted to make all these people who were sorry for her. He would kneel in front of her one day, but the tears would fall down like broken beads. Originally she just wanted to live a peaceful life, but none of these people wanted to let her go. In this case, she would make these people pay the price in this life. Fu Bibai's laughter seemed to be echoing in Nyoda's palace. There was no one around. She was dressed like this again, and when she laughed softly, she looked like a ghost. Her voice and look were a bit creepy, but he was not frightened by her. Instead, he stared at her calmly. Fu Bibai finished laughing. Seeing Lily's calm look in the mirror, an unknown fire surged up in her heart. She was so harmed by her now. She was so miserable that she slammed the comb in her hand onto the table and laughed. "Do I look good?" She had a strange expression, her beautiful face was expressionless at the moment, but her eyes showed madness. When she finished speaking, she reached out and touched her face, and her eyes were staring straight at Lily. Lily nodded, of course you are beautiful. Among the sisters of the Fu family, you were the most outstanding. The two had no intersection before marriage, and they had never had such a calm conversation, although they were nominally cousins. But when Fu Beihe was the daughter of the heir apparent, she was just a poor little girl whose mother died and had no one to protect her. At that time, Fu Beihe was being favored, and there were many sisters in the Fu family, so the relationship between the two was not deep. Even last night Fu Banian was still thinking about stepping on her, but now Fu Banian looked at her and laughed. I know I'm good looking. Originally, when the Fu and Lu families wanted to cooperate, the Fu family wanted to marry a daughter into the Lu family. Do you think that one of the people who would enter the palace to serve the prince must be me? At that time, Fu Banian was beautiful, and he was indeed the best candidate to enter the palace to serve the prince. This was indeed the case in the original plot where Fu Banian was not reborn. Fu Beihe had always thought this way, and a stunning ordinary man like Fu Banian would never protect her. Can't help it, plus she doesn't have the support of her own mother, who will send her not to the palace. That is to say, the imperial power of the Zhou dynasty has fallen, and Liang Qi is not as powerful as others. Otherwise, no matter how she tricks, a beautiful woman like her will only have one way to enter the palace in the end. She asked this now. Beihe did not say anything, Fu Banian, but gradually his laughter became louder. It's a pity that on that day, your agencies were all over and several cousins were fighting over each other. In the end, I, the one you all thought would enter the palace, ended up marrying Crown Prince Lu. Those of you who had the best hope of becoming the Crown Prince's wife ended up marrying him instead after entering the palace to serve the emperor. You are gradually falling out of favor. You have been in the palace for many years and have been just a nobleman. So you are unwilling to accept it and are jealous that I live a better life than you. Therefore, yesterday, Yansu specially asked Yansu to humiliate me and force the Lu family to send me to the palace. Come and ruin my life, right? As Fu Banian spoke, her chest rose and fell gradually faster. Her originally forced calm mask was now cracked, and her expression became a bit ferocious. When Lily heard her words, she couldn't help but curl her lips. Just sipped it? This time Lily's mission originally had nothing to do with Fu Banian. Although Fu Beihe's life tragedy in the plot is indeed inseparable from Fu Banian, Fu Beihe is unwilling at best. She just wants to get the emperor's favor and prove that she is no better than Fu Banian. Fu Bibanze also wanted the Fu family to see that the Fu family's daughter they gave up was not completely useless. This mission was purely because the original owner was not willing to stay in the palace for the rest of her life. As a chess piece of the Fu family, she could not move even a single step. The opportunity was given away when she had time to go. It had nothing to do with Fu Bibai. Unfortunately, Fu Bibai had a whim yesterday. She kept a low profile for so many years and tolerated it for so long, but in the end she couldn't hold it back and became the one who was shot. The first bird hit Yansu's hand and was sent to the palace by the Lu family. I have no grudge against you, why do you want to harm me? Fu Bibai clenched his hands into fists and gritted his teeth. Lily raised her eyebrows when she heard this. I harmed you? Fu Bibai, I am just a nobleman who has fallen out of favor in the palace, what can I do to harm you? The thief shouted, catch the thief. Lily's words completely angered Fu Banian. Without thinking, she reached out and swept down all the various things in front of the dressing table, laughing until she shed tears. Come out. What a noble person who has fallen out of favor. What a noble person who has fallen out of favor. Fu Beihe, you can deceive others even more than Liang Qi, but you can't hide it from me. You, a noble person who has fallen out of favor, are really capable. You can't get Liang Qi's favor, but you can cheat with Liang Qi. Yansu hooked up. Last night Yansu humiliated me in public, just to stand up for you, right? Fu had traveled through time and was reborn for so many years, and she had lived for so many years. She couldn't see through it at first, but she actually understood it after she went back. Come here. Yan Su was furious last night and accused the emperor of being idle and useless. It was purely because the emperor suggested playing with flower balls at that time. When he proposed to play with flower balls, he wanted Lily to pick them up. Fu Bibai didn't think about it at first. But then she thought about the scene when Yan Su asked Mr. Lu and Mrs. Lu to pick up things. She and the Lu family were both in bad luck. The emperor who agreed with this method suffered, but the rest of the people were not affected at all. Even Lily was not hated by Liang Qi in the end. The more she thought about it, the more something was wrong. On the way back, she originally wanted to tell Madame Lu what she had discovered. Prince Yan also had a weakness, but at that time Madame Lu was humiliated by Yan Su. In anger, with pain in his heart, he didn't want to pay attention to her. Originally, Fu Bibai thought that he had so many opportunities, and that he would wait until her husband returned to his room to think about it. But before he returned to his room, when he woke up, he had already been sent to the palace, and suffered a terrible fate. Liang Qi was defiled by that foolish king. If he hadn't figured out the cause and effect last night, Fu Banian might have felt despair, but now that he realized that he had been plotted and betrayed, Fu Banian was really unwilling to accept it. Once she eliminated her will to die, she immediately someone called Lily over. Thinking of the fire pit that she finally jumped out of, because Lily was thrown in again, Fu Bibai clenched her hands into fists, and the fingertips were pinched into the flesh, but she shouted without saying a word of pain. She herself was already unclean. She couldn't see Lily being so arrogant and wanting her to be dirty alone, but Lily wanted to stay with Yan Su and fly together? That's a dream. Since Yan Su dares to plot against her, she is alone and unable to kill Yan Su, but she wants Lily to taste the feeling of having a lover but being defiled and torn apart by others. Then she will make Yan Su regret and make him regret the humiliation he did to her yesterday. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 756. Anyway, I'm tired of staying in the Lu family. I happen to have a taste of the glory and wealth in this palace. I really want to thank him for helping me. Fu Bibai's heart was bleeding, but his face showed indifference. She sneered twice, turned around and sat back in front of the mirror, and whispered, "Get out." Fu Banian called him to come, but in the end he let him leave without doing anything. When Lily came out of her palace, the sun shone on her body, as if all the haze had been swept away, and Lily felt warm all over. Silent and speechless, Fu Bibai said that Yan Su humiliated Liang Qi yesterday just to vent her anger. In fact, she also vaguely had such suspicions. Fu Bibai was very unusual today. I'm afraid this matter is not over yet. She stretched out her hands to block the sun and closed her eyes. Gradually he narrowed his eyes. In the following time, Fu Banian doted on the harem. Liang Qi got a beauty like her and wished he could hold her in his hands. She became the most doted woman in the palace. In just 2 months, she was named Zheyi by Liang Qi and given the title Yunhua. Not long after Liang Qi came to the throne, although there were many women in the palace, there were only a few who were granted positions. In the past, the most favored concubine in the palace was the virtuous concubine Fu Balian, but none of these women were given by Liang Qi. Therefore, when Fu Bibai was awarded Yunhua Zheyi, countless people behind his back twisted the veil and gritted their teeth. The newly favored Zheyi found out that she was pregnant only 2.5 months after entering the palace. The emperor doted on her even more. Fu Balian, who was the most favored in the past, gradually fell out of favor. Liang Qi hardly cared about her. He went to her palace again, but stayed at Fu Banian's side. Fu Balian had nothing to do on weekdays. Most of the time he would summon Lily and Fu Balian to her palace to sit and chat. Among the three, Fu Balian forced a smile, but Fu Balian had evil intentions. Lily usually went there to kill time, and occasionally Fu Balian when he was entangled by Liang Qi and couldn't get away. He practiced star training and physical skills in his palace, and time flew by even faster. The Chinese New Year will be approaching in 1 month, and most places in the palace have been replaced with brand new palace lanterns since Fu Bibai entered the palace. She often called Lily to sit and chat in her palace. As a result, Beihe's status has also increased. Half a month ago, the palace people packed up an old palace for her. Although the palace is in a remote location, Lily can live in it alone and still be the master of the palace. No one was around. Although the palace has been enlarged. But Ruolan was still the only maid serving beside her. Lily could guess that this matter had something to do with Fu Balian. Although Fu Balian often called her and Fu Balian to sit in her palace recently, her expression seemed gentle. But in reality, those eyes were filled with more and more hatred. Sometimes she hid it well, but occasionally when she looked at her, her eyes were like knives. There must be a trick behind changing the palace, but the matter of changing the palace also affected Lily. The good thing is that now she lives alone in a palace with a small kitchen. Not only is it much easier for her to move around, but she no longer has to worry about it when people know she is related to Fu Bibai when she lived with the other 2 concubines before. He always stared at her with a resentful look, and came to inquire about her relationship with Fu Beihe from time to time, hoping that she could help pull the strings, which disturbed a lot of Beihe's martial arts training time. Fu Beihe's actions can be regarded as indirectly replacing Beihe. Trouble solved. The first winter snow of the year fell early in the morning. Lily had just gotten up in the morning, and before Ruolan had time to bring her some food, the aunt Fu Bibai sent for her to sit outside came again. There was a look of helplessness on Ruolan's face. After Fu Banian entered the palace, she frequently called Lily and Fu Balian to sit in her palace. Except sometimes she was entangled by Liang Qi and couldn't get away. Over the past few months, it never stopped, and she didn't feel annoyed. Ruolan was even a little annoyed for Lily. Before the aunt came in, she leaned into Lily's ear, "Master, why don't you let the prince think of a way?" She gestured to cut her throat. Lily knew clearly in her heart that Ruolan was from Yansu, but it was the first time that she showed it so clearly. Lily looked at the figure in the mirror, straightened her collar with a smile, "No need for now, she wants to. If she wants to play, I will play with her. Yansu is far more dangerous than Fu Banian." Lily has a hunch that if she messes with Fu Banian, she can bear the consequences herself, but if she messes with Yansu, it will definitely be more dangerous than if she messes with Fu Banian. Trouble. When she said this, Ruolan had no choice but to sigh and retreat again. It was snowing outside, and the polished bluestone on the ground was a little slippery. When the thin soft-soled shoe stepped on the stone slab, a coldness penetrated from the soles of the feet. Ruolan held an umbrella and followed Lily to Fu in the Centenary Palace. Fu Banian was not there. It was said that she was feeling unwell today. When she got up in the morning, she called the medical lady. The maid guarding outside her palace was a little cautious. "Zhe ordered me to go in and sit for a while. The empress said that she coming right away." There were a lot of winter sweets planted in Fu Bibai's palace. When the cold wind blew, a scent of winter sweet mixed with a strong smell of blood hit his face. The palace was tightly covered, and Lily didn't know Fu Banian. What kind of trick was playing in her mind? She nodded silently and stepped in. Ruolan wanted to follow, but the palace maid subconsciously stopped her. As they entered the inner palace, the rich smell of blood became more and more obvious. There were even a few drops of red marks on a large row of double-sided screens, as if something had spattered on them. Lily sneered. There was a kick on the screen, and there was a crisp sound of dang. The heavy screen of rich and noble flowers was kicked to the ground by Lily. It fell, and Fu Balian's lifeless head appeared in front of Lily. Because Lily kicked down the screen, a strong wind was brought up, and her head was blown around. The eyes that had lost their luster followed the movement of her head, and a pair of dead fish eyes seemed to be looking around. Generally, the originally tidy palace was now covered with blood that had not dried up, and the smell was so strong that it made people want to vomit. Fu Balian's body seemed to have been tied up in a large font before she was alive, with her head hanging from the beam, her arms and lower limbs. Each of them was tied in another direction, and her arms and legs bounced in 4 directions and then fell to the ground. It was as if someone had pulled her to pieces from 5 directions. Her head was hung high on the beam, and there were splashes of blood on the ground. There was foam on the ground and drops of blood scattered everywhere. The scene could make people sick from fear after watching it. She opened her eyes wide, as if she died very willingly. Her originally beautiful face became somewhat ferocious and twisted after her death. It was obvious that she was in great pain before her death. There was blood on one end of her head, but that face seemed to have been wiped by someone, and it was so pale and clean. The corners of his mouth were still raised, and his eyes were bleeding. People outside heard the noise inside and rushed in hurriedly. The palace servant who was originally guarding outside let out a scream of surprise. After just one glance, he fell to the ground softly. Rulan also followed in and saw this scene. Although she was not as timid as the previous palace servant, her face turned pale. She opened her mouth and retched, "Master, leave." Fu Balian died inexplicably. After entering Fu Balian's palace for 100 years, he would definitely have something to do with it. This game was not done well. Soon the palace guards rushed over. Fu Balian, as the emperor's favorite concubine, suddenly died in Yunhuazeyi's palace. And the first person to discover her was Lily. When the guards came over, they immediately arrested Lily. Liang Qi didn't care about Fu Balian's death. He coaxed his beauty who was crying heartbrokenly. He only saw her tears in his eyes, and he didn't remember that someone in the palace had died. There had been a death in this palace, so it was no longer very auspicious. He coaxed Fu Bibane to temporarily move into his palace. Logically speaking, this was not in line with the ancestral etiquette. However, in less than 100 years since the founding of the Zhou dynasty, the emperor's power was weak and the ethics were weak. Naturally, he is not as strict as before. The Emperor Liang Qi is just a person who does not even have to show off when he goes to court. Who cares whether he will endanger the country because he favors a woman? Lily was imprisoned, but for some unknown reason, she was released again in the evening. Her palace was not cleaned all day, and the withered yellow leaves fell all over the courtyard when it snowed. Rulan was still being treated after being locked up and not coming out. She returned to the cold palace alone. No one even lit up the lanterns in the palace at night. Birds were chirping cuckoo for some reason. Where could the birds chirp at this time of year? Lily couldn't help but want to laugh. She seemed to hear the harsh sound of a cat in heat from time to time in the corner. She was not afraid and just poured water to wash her face. She knew what happened today. Fu Balian died inexplicably. At this moment, gong gong, there was no one in the room, and every sound she made seemed to be echoed. Before she climbed onto the bed, the half-closed window was suddenly pushed open, and the wind came in. It was originally bright. The candle flame went out with a pop. There was a swish sound of fabric friction, and there seemed to be people around. Lily took off her clothes calmly, but moved her hand to her head, took out the hosta with her hair and held it in her palm. A white shadow flashed from the window. However, the window was now wide open, occupying about half of the wall. The white shadow seemed to be so light that it had no legs. It floated up along the window and suddenly swayed towards the door. Lily's back was turned to the white shadow. The shadow, she was getting closer and closer, and when Lily Leng turned her head, she happened to see the face of a woman who looked like Fu Balian, with disheveled hair and a pale face. "Give me back my life." She let out a gloomy cry. At night, there was no one around. Today, she saw the scene before Fu Balian's death again. In addition, there were inexplicable calls of birds and cats outside. No one could see it. In such a scene, one would think that an innocent soul had taken her life. Her body was floating lightly in the air. Without thinking, Lily used the hosta in her hand as a hidden weapon and threw it at her. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 757. With a sound, the hosta was thrown out by Lily using some internal force. The white ghost figure never thought that she would react like this. When he saw her action, he felt something bad, but it was too late to hide. The most important thing was that she was in mid-air and had no way to avoid it. When she struggled to avoid it, the hosta came quickly and with the force of Lily's throw. Even though she struggled hard, it happened to be stuck in the white shadow. On the belly, it quickly disappeared into the body. I don't know if it was because of the hosta sinking into the body. The wound was tightly blocked. For a while, even bloodshot eyes didn't come out. The white shadow was still swaying around, making sounds from its mouth. There was a painful groan, and when she swayed to the direction of the window, she jumped to the ground, stumbled onto the window sill, and when she climbed out, there was a bang sound, and most of the window that had been propped up fell down, blocking the way. Out of Lily's sight, the white shadow quickly disappeared. The chirping of birds and cats was still there, but the eerie and strange feeling disappeared. Lily then took out the fire stick and lit the lamp. She is not afraid of these things. Fubanian wanted to use this trick to scare her, but he made a mistake. In the missions she has done, she is not afraid of the real ghosts, let alone the ghosts pretended by people. Even if Fubalian really came to her door today, she wouldn't be afraid. What's so scary about a dead soul who died in such a miserable state when he couldn't even fight against others? Fubibai didn't expect to have the guts to kill someone, but he didn't have the brains to plan, so she went around in such a big circle in vain, and finally came up with some useless tricks. Thinking of this, Lily's smile became colder. There was a small pool of blood on the ground and on the window sill, and a thin thread was tied to the beam above his head. Someone was hanging on it just now, probably for this reason. Lily pulled the thread off, and the broken part seemed to have been cut with scissors. She was about to go out to see if the trickster was there when someone clapped her hands outside the window. She turned her head to see Yansu standing outside the window. I don't know when it came, but the lights in the room cast shadows on his handsome and gentle face, and I could only vaguely see the slightly hooked corners of his lips and his chin like a knife. I thought you would be scared. The window was touched by her when the man pretending to be a ghost was escaping. Now Yansu reached out and pushed it up. His gentle and elegant features gradually appeared in front of Lily, and the next two people looked at each other across a wall. Lily didn't know how long he had been looking at her. Yansu must have noticed her previous move of using a hosta as a hidden weapon to hurt someone. She paused and said, "What's there to be afraid of, pretending to be a ghost?" Fubalian was so useless when he was alive and died at the hands of others. If she turns into a ghost after death, there are still ways to deal with her. Lily has seen many monsters and ghosts during her mission, but she is not afraid of these things. So Fubanian made a bad move, but naturally she couldn't tell Yansu like this, so she came up with an excuse. Nature is easy to change, and ghosts are also changed by people. If she is weak and incompetent when she is alive, no matter how resentful she is after death, she will still be the same person in her bones. If Fubalian really turns into a ghost and comes back, the weaker she is, the more bullied she will be, if she is tougher. On the contrary, she was afraid. Just like the carp monster that Lily encountered during the mission and was eaten alive by Yun Munan, she was extremely fierce when facing mortals who had no power to restrain a chicken, but when she met Yun Munan who put her to death Munan. It was just that Yun Munan had just bit her, and she was already so frightened. Yan Su's eyes flashed. Hearing what she said, the smile on the corner of his mouth deepened, and he jumped in the window. The wind was very strong tonight. When he came in, the window was pulled up, the candlestick on the table shook again, and the hall was dim and bright. That scene made people a little scared. Lily took a lampshade and put it on it, and the fire slowly became steady. Yan Su had already received the news about the death of the wise concubine in the palace. He knew at that time that Lily had been trapped in the situation, but fortunately, the girl he saw was not that simple, and she did not even give him a hero. When he had the opportunity to save the beauty, he had already forced the ghost back. The sounds of cats and birds outside gradually stopped. Yan Su washed her face and feet with the cold water that Lily had washed before, and took off her clothes. She looked like she was going to stay. It was already raining and snowing at night. It was very cold. There was a new palace and no charcoal fire was brought. Lily was the only one in Nyoda's palace, so it inevitably seemed a bit deserted. When Yan Su stayed to rest, they usually slept together, which was better than his own. It was much warmer to sleep alone. He lay on the bed and took out an unfinished novel from under the pillow. Lily was lying in the back room. He had just soaked his feet in cold water. Now his legs were so cold that Lily seemed disgusted. Shrinking his body, he hooked the corner of his mouth. The more disgusted she became, the closer he got, until he squeezed her into the bed. Seeing that she was inevitably bored and holding back, he reached out and hooked her. She held a strand of hair between her fingers. "I'll bear with you for the next 2 days." It took Lily a while to realize that he should be referring to Fu Bibai's incident. She pulled the quilt higher and heard this: "It's just a fake ghost living in the heart of a real ghost. Whether it was true or not, she is not afraid at all. On the contrary, if Fu Bibai's one move fails, there will definitely be another one. She must save her energy and face her properly. As for Ruolan, who is imprisoned, because she is from Yansu, those investigating the case, it is impossible for the eunuch to do anything to her, and he can put her back in 2 or 3 days at most, so there is no need for Lily to worry too much. Fu Bailian died today. What did the people in the palace say?" At that time, Beihe and Ruolan were taken into custody by the guards, who came immediately and imprisoned in the Shenxing division. For some reason, they did not suffer any loss in the end. I was just locked up for a whole day, and I didn't know much about the situation in the palace. Lily didn't care about this at first, but after Yansu finished asking, she felt that the palace was very quiet for a moment, so she found something to talk about. As soon as the words were spoken, Yansu laughed silently. "It is said that Mrs. Fu was frightened, and she was pregnant, so she was promoted to a noble concubine. People in the harem were already making a fuss over this matter, but the former court didn't care. As a matter of course, there is no small matter in the royal family. For ordinary people, marrying wives and taking concubines is just a family matter, but for the emperor, it is a matter of the world. Originally, the emperor should make suggestions for the imperial concubine, and then the people planned an edict to the ancestral temple. If the ministers had no objections, they would calculate a good time and auspicious days before carrying out a series of follow-up work. However, because Liang Qi was famous but not powerful, the ministers did not mind at all whether he wanted to give Fu the position of a century-old concubine. Now, the emperor's important affairs have become his own private affairs. One can imagine how far the emperor's power has fallen today. Let him play for 2 days, and you can just watch the fun." Yan Su turned over a page of the book and said casually. Lily responded and said a few more words, listening to the slight sound of Yan Su turning the book. As well as the small sound when the candle flames burst out. Lily was also tired from the day, and Lily slowly closed her eyes. She fell asleep, and Yan Su's gaze that originally fell on the book moved over. He glanced at her with a complicated expression. He put down the book in his hand, reached out and touched her head gently, and touched her head with a smile. The originally cold smile slowly became a little softer. He looked out the window, where Bai Ying had just escaped. If she hadn't needed to involve Liang Qi, that loser, he would have been pretending to be a ghost before. He had already stopped the shadow. The cold wind blew loudly at night. After the figure in white clothes escaped from the Lily Palace, she did not dare to go to a bright place for fear of being discovered and stopped. She walked around a few places by familiar means. A small flower bush pulled off the white scarf on his body, revealing Fu Bibai's pale, bloodless but still beautiful face. She bit her lip tightly, the pain below her belly was already cold. In order to pretend to be a ghost and scare Lily, she was still barefoot. When she stepped on the snow, it felt like a knife was cutting her. The hosta in her lower abdomen almost cut her. The body penetrated, and although the blood flow was blocked, the hairpin penetrated deeper into the flesh with every step she took. Although the pain was so painful that she was already numb, she still felt a little more difficult with every step she took. She miscalculated. She didn't expect that Lily would not be afraid of ghosts and monsters seeking their lives. Anyone who saw Fu Balian's death would be so frightened that he would have nightmares, but Lily was not afraid. She originally planned to kill Fu Balian, because Fu Balian was one of the people who made Behi lose face that day. Fu Balian was not willing to accept why he was not the only one who made Behi lose face that day. In the end, it was just Fu Balian who was unlucky and painful. So when she wanted to set a trap, she first thought of Fu Balian, the scapegoat. She was also Fu's daughter. If she wanted to call her to come to her palace, even if she didn't want to, she couldn't find much excuses for refusal. Fu Banian originally thought that killing Lily would be too cheap for her, so she originally wanted to scare Lily out of her wits, and finally asked Liang Qi to give her a fatal blow, causing Yansu a lifetime of pain. After all, Fu Banian knew, to make a person suffer, simply killing someone is not terrible. Sometimes the psychological damage is lifelong. She set up a trap for more than a month to kill Fu Balian early this morning. In the end, Lily also hid her as she wished. When she was summoned by the palace's Shenxing department for interrogation, a trap was set up in her palace. The palace was the place where she lived in her previous life. She had stayed there for several years and was very familiar with every plant and tree there. She had already thought about how to get in and how to leave, but she didn't expect that Lily would not be afraid at all. Seeing such a terrifying scene, she still had the ability to resist. In the end, not only was she not scared out of her wits, leaving a psychological shadow, but she gave herself a blow. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 758. There was a hosta in her stomach, but blood couldn't help but pour out from Fu Bibai's body. She didn't notice it at first, but when she realized it later, it had been scattered all over the ground along the road. She was losing more and more blood, but for some reason, it was obvious that when she was defiled by Liang Qi when she entered the palace, she wanted to die, but when she was really facing death, Fu Banian didn't dare to die anymore. She struggled to walk towards the palace, but she didn't know that Liang Qi was already in the palace at this time. In a fit of rage, Liang Qi had been waiting for Fu Banian for half an hour, but there was no sign of the beauty. He gradually became a little restless, fearing that Fu Banian wanted to escape from him and return to the Lu family, so he sat for a while and Liang Qi then began to call people out to look for Fu Bibai, but now that he had the power, he could not mobilize many people in the palace. This was what made Liang Qi particularly angry. The people he sent out did not wait until more than half an hour later. Only then did they find Fu Banian and bring him back. At that time, Fu Banian was lying in a bush and passed out. When he was carried back, Liang Qi was still cursing the Yan family and his son for not returning their hegemony. The reason for the silence was not because he was afraid that Liang Qi would get angry, but because he was afraid that his words about Duke Yan would be spread to the ears of the Yan family, and everyone would be in trouble. "Call the doctor, call the doctor." Liang Qi looked at Fu Bibai, who was breathing weakly, and his heart ached. Fortunately, Fu Bibai was still breathing, even though her body was as cold as ice at the moment. The doctor it didn't come quickly. It was the 12th lunar month of winter, and Liang Qi's prestige was not high. He sent someone to call the imperial doctor, but the imperial doctor took a long time to come. When he took Fu Bai's pulse for 100 years, she already had cold air entering her body. The most important thing was yes, there is still a hosta in her belly. Fu Bibai was originally pregnant, but when the hairpin was removed, the child was naturally aborted, and she walked a long way. The hairpin fell into the belly and could not be taken out at all. The imperial doctor had no choice but to use a silver knife to cut open the flesh and make the wound larger. Then he reached in and took out the hairpin. The wound was inflamed, Fu Bibai was cold again, and she had a miscarriage. After struggling all night, Liang Kaibao roared that if Fu Bibai couldn't save his life, he would behead the imperial doctor. No one in the palace paid him any attention. I just don't know if Fu Banian is lucky. In the end, she got over it, and at dawn, she slowly opened her eyes. She almost couldn't hold her breath several times this night. When she opened her eyes, it felt like a lifetime ago. Liang Qi sat next to her, holding her hand tightly. He still felt a little sincere about Fu Bibai. When he heard that Fu Bibai was in danger last night, he had been staying by his side. Liang Qi's eyes were bloodshot and he hadn't slept all night. The stubble on his chin had popped out. When he saw Fu Bibai wake up, there was a look of surprise in his eyes. "Eli, Bai, you're finally awake," he almost cried with joy, but Fu Bibai was so disgusted that he wished he could throw his hand away. Liang Qi's affectionate side did not move her. Instead, it aroused resentment in her heart. But at this moment, she endured it, barely glanced at Liang Qi, and closed her eyes again. When she saw Liang Qi, I couldn't help but want to slap him and tell him to go away. This man ruined her life. Although she was sent to the palace by the Lu family, if Liang Qi was a gentleman, he shouldn't have taken advantage of her when she was in trouble. Pretending to be a love saint now was simply too much. Boring her. "Do you know how I fainted outside?" Fu Bibai endured the anger in his heart and suddenly opened his mouth to ask. Liang Qi looked at her dry lips and originally wanted to pour water for her to moisten her throat, but it was audible hearing this. He was stunned for a moment. "Bai Wen, why did you go out and get seriously injured again?" "Yesterday, concubine Xian had an accident." "I'm worried that you were plotted by a villain." This palace was originally the Liang family's. In the world, there are some people in the palace, and who are really available to him, but Liang Qi can't count any of them. He sat on the chair a little decadently, stretched out his hands to pull his hair, and his eyes became sinister. "It's all my fault. I am useless and cannot protect you." It was obviously his own territory, but something happened to his woman on his own territory. At this time, Liang Qi was thinking about the Yan family who had taken away the power of the Liang family, and he was gnashing his teeth with hatred. "Got up. To be honest with the emperor, I was seriously injured last night, and it was actually related to Lily Fu." Fu Beihe, Len Ye heard the name, and Liang Qi didn't react for a moment. Fu Beihe had been in the palace since he was the eldest prince, but at that time he only had Fu Beihe in his heart. For the other, how can the vulgar fans be seen again? In those years, apart from knowing that Fu Beihe was Fu Beihe's sister, I had no memory of what she looked like, what her name was, and how old she was. At this time, Fu Banian mentioned he was stunned at Lily's name, and Fu Bibai sneered in his heart. He was tired of Liang Qi, a heartless and unjust man, and didn't want to talk to him anymore, but he had to open his eyes. The wound on her stomach hurt like fire, and she broke out in a cold sweat every time she said a word. However, this idiot Liang Qi still wanted her to explain. She was a little impatient, but suppressed her disgust and explained in a soft voice. When I came into the palace on the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, I proposed to play with flowers. She was the noble lady you thought was the palace maid. She was originally my third uncle's legitimate daughter. She came to the palace to serve the emperor in the 12th year of the late emperor's reign, she told Fu Beihe. Having told the origin of the story, Liang Qi may not remember clearly how many years Beihe entered the palace, but when it comes to what happened that night during the Mid-Autumn Festival, Liang Qi will never forget it in his life. That day, the Yan family's father and son scolded him in public and told him not to come down. After that, he returned to the palace and fell seriously ill. At this moment, hearing Fu Banian's reminder, Liang Qi quickly thought of Lily, whose appearance had changed. He couldn't remember clearly. Anyway, in front of a stunning beauty like Fu Bibai, other women could no longer fall into his eyes. However, he vaguely remembered that there was such a woman named Fu. He didn't expect that such a woman would dare to hurt the feelings in his heart. When Liang Qi heard this, he became furious. She dares to hurt you. Why didn't she dare? Why did the emperor think that Yan Su wanted to show off to you that day? Fu Banian looked at Liang Qi's arrogant look and sneered, it's all because your majesty, you humiliated Fu Beihe, so Yan Su was unhappy. If you think about it carefully, I suggested playing with bouquets, and you asked Fu Beihe to pick them up. Later, Yan Su scolded the emperor for playing with things, and finally asked the Lu family to pick things up. After she finished speaking, the look on Liang Qi's face became a little confused, and he obviously didn't understand the connection between the two. Fu Bibai cursed a few times in his mind. Even a woman like him could see things clearly, but Liang Qi, a fool, woke up on his own. He didn't understand. No wonder such a person would have Zhongshan in the hands of others. He bit his lip, endured the pain, and said impatiently. I accidentally discovered these two people having a tryst together last night, so I was plotted by Lily Fu. Fortunately, I was lucky enough to escape. After talking for a long time, Liang Qi finally understood that what Fu Bibai meant was that Yan Su and Lily were secretly in love and got involved together. It was because he humiliated Lily that day that Yan Su embarrassed him. Liang Qi understood. At this point, he was so angry that he trembled all over, gritted his teeth and cursed. This restless bitch. I'm going to cut her into pieces. It's one thing that he doesn't like Lily, but Lily is Liang Qi's woman in name, and his own woman gave him a piece of cake behind his back. Liang Qi was naturally unwilling to wear a colored hat. Although he pretended to be generous that day and said that he wanted to give Yan Su a woman for him to choose, but at that time it was just an angry comment. What belongs to him, he is ruined and reluctant to give it to the Yan family, whether it was a woman or a country. Liang Qi cursed again and again. Fu Bibai reached out to touch the tied wound on his stomach and stared at him coldly. Why did the emperor break her into pieces, a corpse with 10,000 pieces? With Yan Su protecting her, even if I suffer a loss, I still deserve it. The common people of the Zhou dynasty almost didn't know the emperor's reign and name, but no one knew the surnames of the Yan family and his son. The Yan family and his son were even more domineering in the palace, and Liang Qi was still clamoring to kill him. What about the Yan family and his son? This made Fu Bibai particularly annoyed. What's more, it was always my seventh sister. How could I bear to watch her die? She was originally the emperor's woman, but because you didn't favor her all these years, I was afraid that she suddenly had an affair. Why don't the emperor treat her a little better and let her get pregnant? As long as a woman has a child, won't she give up on her? Fu Banian came up with the idea, and when he thought of Lily's affair with Yan Su, he felt resentful in his heart. Why did she block her wonderful marriage, but now she could have a relationship with Yan Su, and even let Yan Su vent her anger on her behalf? Her life was ruined because of Lily, and she wanted to let Yansu taste the feeling of losing a woman. She was defiled by a good-for-nothing man like Liang Qi. Fu Banian also hoped that Lily would end up like her, and that Yansu would be disgusted with her in the future. By killing her, Lily will no longer be innocent, and by scaring her crazy and making her die in pain, only then can she avenge the destruction of her life. You want me to endure this tone? Liang Qi looked reluctant, and Fu Bibai glanced at him. With Yansu here, do you dare to kill her? Liang Qi was speechless with one sentence. He gritted his teeth and thought for a long time, with a timid look in his eyes, since you know she is Yansu's woman, if I touch her, the Yan family. Just now he was shouting that Yansu had dared to cuckold him, but now he looked timid. Fu Banian never thought that his life would be ruined by such a useless and cowardly man. His heart became more and more resentful, but his face remained unchanged. Voice and color. My seventh sister is the emperor's woman. It is natural for you to touch her. So what if Yansu knows about it? What's more, if the emperor can get her, wouldn't it be equivalent to snatching something back from Yansu? Unfinished, to be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 759. Fu was Liang Qi's woman before he was reborn 100 years ago. We understand his mentality very well. He always dreams of taking back the country from the Yan family. Even if he can't take back the country, he can take back a woman from Yansu. It was also a great temptation for him. As expected, as soon as she said these words, Liang Qi's heart began to move. Still a century of caring, don't worry, I will always only have you in my heart, even if I touch her, it's just because I see your face and can't bear to make you sad. Yansu is really hateful. When I get back the power, the Yan family will be the first to need it. Kill the whole family. When he talked about it later, his eyes showed ambition. At this moment, he hadn't got Lily yet, but he seemed to have seen that he had snatched the woman back from Yansu, and then regained the power from the Yan family's father and son. Before he took back the political power, he started daydreaming. Fu couldn't wait for 100 years for him to sleep with another woman. How could it not hurt him? But when she saw that he was pretending to be loyal even though he clearly wanted to sleep with another woman, her heart was so filled with disgust that she clenched her fists tightly in order to hold back from speaking evil words. During the day, news spread in the palace that Fu Bibai was made a noble concubine. The emperor's succession ceremony half a year ago was very simple and not grand, let alone just naming a noble concubine. Except for some gifts from the Fu family and the Lu family inside and outside the palace, no other courtiers or female family members of third-rank officials or above even came into the palace. Ever since Liang Qi listened to Fu Bibai's words, his heart felt like a fire was burning. He didn't sleep last night, but today he was extremely excited. He couldn't sleep. Although he wanted to get Lily right away so that Yansu could feel what it was like to be robbed, but for Liang Qi, he felt that Lily was just a grasshopper in the palm of his hand and could not escape at all, so even if he wanted to slap Yansu in the face again, he would express his anger. But the top priority was Fu Banian's health. After all, Fu Banian was the person he had cared about for many years, so he endured it for 2 days and stayed in front of the newly promoted concubine's bed every day. Watching her recover from her injuries, and when her wounds gradually scabbed over, she remembered about Yuki Lily. And in these few days, because he stayed by Fu Bibai's bed every day, he had no idea what was going on outside. In fact, even if he didn't stay by Fu Bibai's bed, he could hardly control several situations in the capital. He didn't know much about what was going on outside. When the eunuch standing beside him heard him asking about the location of Lily Palace, a strange look flashed in his eyes. Liang Qixiao didn't sleep much in the past few days beside Fu Bibai's bed. He was afraid that he would not be able to survive at the critical moment, so he prepared several red pills and swallowed them. Only then did he have people prepare walking chariots, pens, ink, paper, and inkstones, and also there is a leather whip and other things, and you can bring it with you and let others lead the way. Go towards Lily Palace. At this time, Liang Qi's heart was full of fantasies. He didn't know that the capital had been closed 2 days ago. 3 of the 4 gates of the inner palace were tightly closed and were under the control of the emperor. The Yulan and Kimin armies had been penetrated one after another within 2 months, but at that time the emperor got a new Fu Bibai. It was a fresh time, and his long-cherished wish for several years came true. Where can I take care of other worries? What's more, the Yan family has always been in charge of major government affairs. Although Liang Qi is eager to take back the political power, he is used to not worrying about everything. So even if it's something important. But he didn't care at all. He hurriedly ran towards Lily, still dreaming of the dream of unifying the world and taking back power, and on the other side. However, a group of black cavalry and armored men in the city were slowly approaching the palace from the capital. When Liang Qi came to Lily Palace, Ruolan had just been released not long ago. In the past 2 days, she had suffered some hardships and suffered some skin injuries, but they were not serious. Lily told her to go back and wash up before coming back. Not long after she left, Liang Qi's people broke in. Instructing 2 guards to guard the entrance of the palace, Liang Qi led several eunuchs into Lily Palace. Lily looked at the emperor who suddenly walked in. The door outside had been locked for a long time. The weather has been cold recently. Due to Bai Bai's injury and the fact that her plan didn't work that day, she has no longer been summoned to the palace to pretend to be a good sister. She spends her daily time practicing physical skills. Before finishing a set of physical skills, Lily straightened up when she saw the emperor who came in with a gloomy face. Bold. Mrs. Fu, don't kneel down when you see me. Liang Qi pointed at Lily, holding a whip in one hand. He had taken red pills, and his face showed a bit of excitement. At that moment, his eyes shone brightly on Lily's face. Almost through Lily, he saw the world-conquering power in front of him, which made him even more excited. Today I want to be lucky to Mrs. Fu. I don't have to keep records. I'll order someone to bring Bazai's Tang. Afterward, Liang Qi had just ascended the throne for a few years and had no heirs yet. Although he wanted to touch Lily, for Liang Qi, he doesn't like Lily in his heart. The reason why he wants to get her is entirely because he was humiliated by Yan Su that day. Now he knows that Lily and Yan Su are involved. Firstly, he wants to take revenge on Yan Su. Secondly, he wants to get her. He also wanted to earn back his dignity. He looked down on Lily and hated her for being unruly. He thought that Lily was not qualified to give birth to his own children. Therefore, although he was staring at Lily at the moment, he ordered the eunuch, let hold her tightly, Huang'an, grind your pen, ink, paper, and inkstone, and draw a picture of the Fu family that I will be happy with later. I want to keep it and give it to Yan Su when he gets married. Not only did he want to retaliate against Yan Su for touching his woman, but he also wanted to humiliate him and let Yan Su see that no matter how powerful his Yan family was, he still wanted to send a prostitute to his woman if he touched her. Show it to him. The eunuch who was named by Liang Qi lowered his head when he heard this. Liang Qi took the medicine and was excited. He didn't notice anything strange about him. Instead, he imagined how Yan Su would feel when he knew about this. At this time, he became more and more excited. Lily suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Frankly speaking, this was a good opportunity to fulfill the original owner's wish. Fu Beihi's wish was just to be favored by Liang Qi. Now Liang Qi came to her door automatically, and the task was also it was less than half done, but when I saw Liang Qi's face, he looked ferocious and fierce now, with a long whip in his hand, and when he wanted to pamper this body, he had to have the picture drawn. Even if the person in control of this body was not herself when something happened, Lily felt a little bored when she thought about it. The most important thing is that Liang Qi couldn't think of her at first, but now she appeared in her palace inexplicably, and he seemed to have known about her relationship with Yan Su. It was obvious that he touched her to spite Yan Su, and it was very possible it was related to Fu Banian. Lily's eyes flashed. When Liang Qi came over with a long whip, thoughts flashed through her mind, and finally she reached out and grabbed the whip. You dare to rebel? Liang Qi didn't expect that she would resist, and was stunned for a moment. He was a little surprised at first, and then became furious. Ms. Fu, you dare to rebel? Do you believe that I will chop off your head and destroy your entire family? At this point, Liang Qi was slapped in the face by the Yan family in front of the Fu and Lu families. He pretended to be a grandson in front of the Yan family, but pretended to be an uncle in front of his own woman. Lily couldn't bear it anymore. She grabbed the whip hard and dragged it over. Liang Qi still held it tightly at first and didn't want to withdraw her hand. She just used her inner strength on the palm of her hand. With a slight shake, Liang Qi's tiger's mouth went numb, and the long whip was easily removed by her. He snatched it away and held it in her palm. Destroy my whole family? Just based on your virtue? Do you dare to touch the Fu family? Now, Lily is impatient. People like Liang Qi are really annoying. To touch a woman, you have to use such methods to make people. It was too bad to restrain him and then draw the image, not to mention that he wanted to use the long whip. He grabbed the whip with his backhand and looked at Liang Qi and sneered, you want me to draw a picture and give it to Yan Su? Okay. Very well, I happen to have a gift to give him. A puppet emperor was still so arrogant. Lily narrowed her eyes, and the next moment she swung the long whip in her hand to the ground, and the whip made a sound in the air. When it fell to the ground, the blue stone bricks were suddenly cracked. Seeing this scene, Liang Qi took a breath of cold air. He took 2 steps back and subconsciously exclaimed, what do you want to do? Didn't your majesty say that I wanted to rebel? It was unbearable. On that day, Liang Qi, a bitch, dared to ask her to pick up bouquets in public. She had long wanted to slap him like this. Now that she had found the opportunity, Lily made up her mind and turned around. He glanced at the eunuchs holding pens, inks, paper and inkstones. Download the drawings and I will give them to Prince Yan to take a good look at. When Liang Qi said he wanted to draw a picture just now, no one paid him any attention. Now when Lily said he wanted to draw a picture, several eunuchs all responded in unison, yes. While he was talking, someone was folding the tables and rubbing ink. After Lily swung a whip at the other end, when she raised her hand again, the whip in her hand had already been swung towards Liang Qi. Liang Qi did not expect that she would really dare to do it. After all, Lily was very important to him. She was just a concubine in the cold palace, but when the whip hit her body, she started to cry out in pain. He had whipped others with a long whip before, but this was the first time he was whipped. Liang Qi received 2 blows. Although Lily had control of her strength and did not want to kill him with one whip, the skin and flesh were torn apart after 2 whips. Liang Qi returned when he came to his senses. He started running away. He was in pain and afraid that he was angry. He originally wanted to scold a few eunuchs for not coming to help, but when he looked back, he saw that several eunuchs were really serious about painting. Looking at the pattern, there was no intention of anyone coming to save him. Dog slave! I will destroy your entire clan and kill your heads, he yelled angrily. The door had been locked. When Liang Qi wanted to escape, he just ordered someone to prevent Lily from escaping. There was a lock on the outside, but now he couldn't open it no matter what, so he had to run around the house. Occasionally Lily's whip fell on him, making him cry and howl. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 760. The situation was completely reversed. The woman who insulted Yan Su in Liang Qi's imagination did not appear. He was out of breath as he was being chased, panting as if he was going to die. Lily was driving leisurely behind, occasionally running at his speed. When he didn't move, the whip struck him mercilessly, like teasing a dog. But now, the shouts of killing outside the palace gate are loud. Xiaoyahe is hiding in the mansion and dare not show up. The martial law in Beijing has been strict in the past few days, and the guards in the palace have all been replaced by the Yan family. He just wants to report a message to the emperor. The son could no longer get in. Mr. Fu shook his head and sighed, as if he had aged 10 years. The original Yan family did not have the ambition to dominate the world. Otherwise, during the reign of the first emperor, the Yan family would have wanted to force the emperor. It was not impossible to give up the throne. He originally thought that the Yan family did not dare to risk the world's taboo, so he had been forced to endure the dormant. He thought he could slowly take advantage of it. However, during the Mid-Autumn Festival a few months ago, Yan Suxiao deliberately provoked Fu, and the relationship between the Lu family broke down the already unstable cooperation between the two families. When the Fu and Lu families united, they could barely protect themselves from the Yan family. However, once the Lu family retreated, the Fu family would never be able to succeed again. Yan Su is really powerful. He only used one woman to ruin the great cause of Fu and Liu's family. From the moment the Lu family announced Fu Bibai's death, Mr. Fu knew that the Fu family was finished. The Fu family has been passed down for hundreds of years. It has been a scholarly family since the previous dynasty. He did not expect that this time, the inheritance would be cut off by his hands. He looked at the palace and wondered where the Yan family father and son had gone in the palace at this time. Smiled bitterly in his heart. The bloody smell in the palace spread further and further. Liang Qi's originally neat clothes had been beaten to tatters by Lily. He couldn't help but gasp in pain. The palace was already in a mess. Things that could be pushed down had been knocked away when he was running for his life. The screen had been broken by Lily. Several dog slaves in the palace watched helplessly as he, the emperor, was beaten. At this moment, Liang Qi resented the Yan family and the Fu family. He resented Lily and the little eunuchs in front of him even more. He swore in his heart that if he could still live one day, he would cut Lily into pieces. But as time passed and no one came to save him, he gradually became desperate. When he couldn't run at all, he looked back at Lily's face. Lily was holding a long whip in her hand. The whip was dragging on the ground. She sneered and stared at him. "Look at him." As if to see how far he can run. "What are you looking at?" Lily snorted, and whipped out the whip in her hand again, this time hitting Liang Qi's old injury. He was so painful that he couldn't help but convulse, and let out a scream from his mouth, and his legs. It is impossible to lift it up at this moment. The door that had been silent outside seemed to be pushed by someone. Liang Qi's desperate eyes lit up, and he suddenly rushed out without knowing where he got the strength. The door was pushed open by someone from the outside, and with a hand a tall figure wearing a soft armor and holding a helmet was standing by the door. He was still pressing his hand on the scabbard when he saw Liang Qi rushing out. Just listen to a crisp sound of clang. He raised the hand holding the scabbard in the opposite direction, and the long sword folded into a bright silver color in the air. "Guard!" Before Liang Qi could shout out the next word, he only felt a burning sensation on his neck, followed by another wave of coldness. As if something had cut into his flesh, the next moment his trachea was cut. He only saw a large amount of bright red blood spraying out from his neck. When the pain entered his mind and he realized what had happened, Liang Qi could no longer scream. When he opened his mouth, he could only hear blood foam. There was a gurgling sound, and he wanted to breathe, but the breath flowed down his throat. He stretched out his hand to cover the wound, but in vain. He had been chased by Lily for a long time, and he had long since lost his strength. Now he was losing a lot of blood quickly. His thighs softened and he fell to the ground. Yan Su, who was standing at the door, let go of his right hand, and the helmet held on his waist rolled to the ground. He put the sword in his hand back into the scabbard, and strode towards Lily, with a look on his face. With a gentle smile, the hand that just held the helmet stretched out to Lily. "I'm here to pick up my queen." When Lily asked him for the emperor's favor, he had not thought of plotting to usurp the throne. Although Jiangshan's surname was Liang, the person at the helm was the Yan family. If he was not the emperor, he would just lose a status. Well, Lily wanted the emperor's favor. When she saw her being humiliated by those ignorant women because she was not favored, Yan Su suddenly discovered that being an emperor was not as troublesome as she thought. Lily raised her eyebrows. What Fu Lily wanted was the emperor's favor, but which emperor was not mentioned in her wish. Yan Su was very dangerous, but if he could complete the task, it didn't matter whether he was dangerous or not, it was necessary. As long as he completes the task, even if he just stabs the sky, pats his ass and leaves, what can he do? His feet were still stained with Liang Qi's blood, leaving several distinct marks as he walked forward step by step. Liang Qi hadn't breathed his last yet, and his eyes were extremely round. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't. He was speechless for a moment. Looking at Yan Su's back, his eyes gradually dimmed. The royal palace of the great Zhou dynasty changed its owner overnight, and the jade seal has been in the hands of Duke Yan. He had already forged the imperial edict that Liang Qi abdicated and made way for the emperor. The emperor died, and because he had no heirs, he passed the throne to the crown prince of Duke Yan. The people of Zhou dynasty didn't feel anything at all. To them, Liang Qi was just dispensable. Whether he died or not was not even as important as whether Duke Yan was alive or not. Not many people died in the palace that day, except Liang Qi. In addition to the direct lineage inheritance of the family, the Duke of Yan was granted the title of King of Yan. When he found out that the person Yan Su was going to marry was Miss Fu Qi, many people didn't understand. There were many girls in the Fu family, but few people knew who this Miss Fu Qi was. Once they understood when the so-called Miss Fu Qi was the daughter of Mr. Fu San, whom the Fu family sent to serve in the palace, the courtiers fell silent. When the new emperor comes to power, who dares to talk too much? The blood of the Liang family, the former royal family, has not yet gone cold. Even the censor, who is not afraid of death, is keeping his mouth shut at this moment. The new emperor is not an easy talker. If he dies at this moment, his name will be recorded in the annals of history. Their names will not be left behind. After the dust settled, the new dynasty was named Yan. Fu Bibai was sent out of the palace and returned to the Lu family. For her, if she died, it would be better to live. Sometimes death is relief, but living is the greatest torture. Empress Lu of Liang Qi and a group of women were ordered to be buried with her. On Lily's birthday, the female family members of the third rank and above in the court came to the palace to pay homage. The Fu and Lu families are also in it, but in the succession of old and new forces, the two families have obviously been cut off by Yan Su, although they still retain the signature of Ho Yet. However, it was changed from hereditary succession to hereditary succession for 2 generations. If there are no descendants who have made military achievements after 2 generations, one generation will be inferior to the other. If the descendants are mediocre, after a few decades, the two families may be even worse than ordinary nobles. In the palace, Mrs. Fu led Mrs. Fu to kneel in front of Lily. When they came, Mrs. Fu had told them to win Lily's favor. From being an unpopular nobleman during the reign of the late emperor, she later became a queen who was strongly supported by Yan Su. It was only now that the Fu family admitted that they had made a mistake. In the past, they originally thought that this daughter was just a useless piece of chess. After entering the palace and seeing that she was not favored, they almost stopped giving her the resources of the Fu family. But the people of the Fu family, they never thought that a discarded chess piece could make a wonderful move. The soldier who originally cast a wide net just to catch fish would one day be defeated by the general. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival that day. Prince Yan was furious and humiliated the late emperor to the point where he could not hold his head up. At that time, Mr. Fu never dreamed that it would be related to his granddaughter. If he had guessed it earlier, I am afraid that the Fu family would not be in this situation today. At this stage, who would have thought that Lily, who was no more beautiful than Fu Bibai, had not been pampered for many years in the palace, and was just an untitled noble next to the late emperor, was already too old. Such a woman. Will Yan Su be loved in the end? Empress, I have brought you your favorite braised pork with pickles and vegetables when you were at your mother's house. At first you said that the ones made by others didn't taste that good. Now you are celebrating your 20th birthday. I sincerely wish you happiness like the East China Sea. Madame Fu-san stared at Lily eagerly. She was not like that before. Lily looked away when she looked at her. Her daughter had brought her glory, but it was a pity that when Lily wanted to talk to her, she avoided him for fear and treated Lily as a disaster star. Now I want to talk, but the opportunity like that day will never come back again. There are many people who want to please Lily. She is not the original Empress Lu. The power of the Yan family is enough to make the nobles and nobles of the Yan kingdom travel thousands of miles. If Mrs. Fu wants to talk to her now, she is no longer in the queue. She likes to eat. It was the original owner who cooked the meat with plums and vegetables. Unfortunately, the original owner could no longer eat the dish she loved at the beginning. The original owner wanted to prove to the Fu family that she was not a useless abandoned child. Seeing the Fu family's flattering looks, Lily had already replaced her. She does. The congratulatory gifts sent by the Fu family included many things that Lily Fu used to use when she was at her parents' house. They were all available and everything was prepared. Unfortunately, she no longer lacked these things. It is easy to add icing on a cake, but it is difficult to give something when it is time. This principle everyone in the world understands, but what is loved by more people is always the icing on the cake. The Lu family's husband was sent back for 100 years. After sending her to the palace, Lu Shiza took in another imperial concubine. She was touched by Liang Qi. Even though she was still the biological mother of 3 children, the Lu family did not maybe he would admit her, but to the outside world, Mrs. Fu has been dead for 100 years, and she has been defiled by Liang Qi. Prince Lu will not remember that he personally delivered her to Liang Qi, but he will not forget that she has been touched by others, even if she is still beautiful, but Prince Lu can no longer truly love her as before. The new crown princess can tolerate other women, but she may not be able to accommodate Fu Bibai. The Fu family cannot recognize her. The Fu family can't protect themselves at this time, so how can they help her? Although Lily in the palace was her strong backer, she hated Lily that day and wanted to set a trap for her. Although she failed in the end, she was already offended. She experienced the kind of Lily Fu in the plot who has no backing and no backer. She also felt anonymous, and her beauty did not serve as a guarantee for her, but instead became a stumbling block for her. Prince Liu's newly married stepwife was very cunning. She turned from a wife into a concubine, and her children also became embarrassed because of her presence. Half a year later, when she was tortured to the point of being reduced to a human form by the new crown princess, someone from the palace took her back to the palace and arranged for her to live in the palace where she had lived when she was sent to the palace. Fu Balian died there, and the most important thing is that every palace made there, under Lily's arrangement, was made up to look like Fu Balian before she died. Within a few days, Fu Balian went crazy. She didn't dare to look at anyone or let anyone get close to her. When she was crazy, she shouted, "Fu Balian, get out of here." When the imperial doctor checked her pulse, she almost bit off her own tongue and shook it like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. The imperial doctor said that she had lost her mind and had no way to save herself. She wanted to plot against Lily at first, but now Lily is just following the other way. He also used it on him, scaring her into this state. People who don't have ghosts in their hearts, no matter how similar others pretend to be, are unlikely to be scared when they meet them. People like Fu Bibai, who have ghosts in their hearts, will still imagine them to be that ghost, no matter how much others pretend to look like them. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 761. It was just the same design as Fubanian back then, but Lily was not frightened crazy at that time, but Fubanian was completely crazy. The Yan family ascended the throne as emperor, and Lily's mission was to gain the emperor's favor. Although Yan Su did not say that he liked her, after the establishment of the Yan kingdom, there were not many concubines in Yan Su's harem, and Lily did not have the support of the Fu family. The queen's position was still secure, so this mission was completed. When she closed her eyes and returned to the starry sky, Yan Su's eyes gradually became cold and stared at her. He did not have the handsome appearance when he was young. But the intimidating momentum after old age was still there. His eyelids drooped, blocking the brilliance in his eyes. The hand that originally held Lily's palm expressionlessly put it down after she left. When she opened it, he wiped the eyelids that had not been completely closed, blocking her eyes that had lost their luster. There was still residual warmth on her body, but Yansu could no longer see any warmth in her eyes. He ordered Fu Beihi's body to be buried in the imperial mausoleum. It was not with him 100 years later, not the same person. The soul was no longer in this body, leaving only a skin. He was not surprised. As soon as Lily returned to the starry sky, Li Yangzi's expression became sharp for a moment. He felt the familiar aura remaining on Lily's body. Even if it was very slight, he still felt it. Before Lily could speak, she appeared in the starry sky. The attribute values are displayed. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 87, out of 100. Appearance, 91, out of 100. Physical strength, 77, 100 full points. Force, 72, out of 100 points. Spirit, 82, out of 100. Reputation, 35, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Heaven and Earth Gate Tao Te Ching, Southern Gu Technique, Star Body Training Technique. Specialties, Advanced Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements, and Bagua, slightly dabbled in. Charisma, 65, out of 100. Mark, Royal True Dragon Spirit. In the past, Li Yangzi usually released her attribute values when she was about to enter a mission. Now she had just completed the mission and returned to the starry sky. But he showed her attribute values, and Lily raised her eyebrows. What happened? I feel Yun Munan's aura this time. Li Yangzi didn't mean to hide anything from Lily. He would accompany Lily into the mission that day, but ended up falling asleep during the mission. After telling him about the disappearance of Yun Munan, who was originally sealed by him, Lily remembered that the two of them completed the mission and returned to the starry sky that day. Li Yangzi's expression felt a little strange. She entered the mission too hastily. I didn't have time to ask Li Yangzi what happened, but now I didn't expect that Yun Munan was missing. A haze flashed in Li Yangzi's eyes. Generally speaking, kicking is equivalent to the existence of one person. Although they have developed independent personalities, their personalities are probably not much different, and under his influence, Yun Munan she must have liked Lily very much. This time Lily smelled like Yun Munan. It proves that he has appeared before, he has appeared, but Li Yangzi did not find it strange. Yun Munan likes Lily but can control himself. This really makes Li Yangzi feel a little tricky, and he is not like the other 7 emotions. He left with Lily when she returned. It proves that this person's self-control ability has reached a terrifying level. The longer he is left outside, the harder it will be to take him back in the future. He had previously sealed Yoon Munan instead of forcibly absorbing him, because he was afraid that if he was not willing, he would cause trouble one day. Unexpectedly, this personality was so difficult to deal with, and Li Yangzi had some murderous intentions in his heart, although he did not like that he was lost. There was a certain emotion, but if Yoon Munan was still unwilling to come back in the end, then he would have no choice but to let Yoon Munan disappear from this world. Because Li Yangzi was anxious to find Yoon Munan. Naturally, he couldn't talk any more to Lily at this moment. Originally, he wanted Lily to rest in the starry sky for a while and wait for him to come back, but Lily thought about it and saw that her force value was not high, so she still chose to enter the mission. Before she lost consciousness, she saw Li Yangzi's cold eyes. I don't know why I thought of Yan Sulai. 1234, 2234, 3234, a woman spoke Mandarin that was not very standard, shouting slogans and whistles rang in Lily's ears from time to time. Her head felt so swollen and painful, and her hair seemed to be covered with sweat. It was as wet as a few tears slid down her face. When it flowed over her cheek, it itched so much that Lily stretched out her hand to wipe it, but her hands seemed to be filled with lead and she couldn't lift them up at all. Not only did she have a severe headache, but the most important thing was that her heart seemed to be turning upside down. She was so sick that she felt like vomiting came to her heart. Her heart was beating so fast that it was difficult for her to even breathe. Lily stood up, feeling as if there were needles pricking her temples. She gritted her teeth, took several deep breaths, and slowly endured the nausea in her heart. Do a good job. If you don't have a strong body, how can you accompany the guests when they are served by you? The woman who just shouted the slogan shouted again, and a few sparse voices shouted. One, the gasping voice of the dying male voice sounded like an old bellows, like a moan before dying. Sister Lu, let's rest for a while. As soon as these words were spoken, people began to beg one after another, Sister Lu, please rest for a while. Lily's consciousness gradually became clearer, and there was someone over there who begged more. The one named Sister Lu hesitated for a while, and then said unhappily, you guys should rest for a while, 5 minutes at most, and then continue training. These are free trainings, and they are for your own good. If you want to make big money, how is it possible with a small body like yours? No one around made a sound. After a while, after the sound of high heels on the ground faded away, many people relaxed. When Lily opened her eyes, she saw that this was an ordinary old room, because there was no furniture, so it seemed a bit empty. It was about 30 square meters. There were more than a dozen people lying on the ground. Lily was sitting against the wall. When she opened her eyes, no one noticed her. Everyone was wearing the same white t-shirt with the words Royal Hunter Guild printed on it, and shorts of the same color on the lower body. She looked at herself and saw that she was about the same. All of these people were sweating profusely and their faces were flushed. Some people guessed that it's so hot that I put my face on the ground and don't want to lift it up at all. There were so many people at this time, and although only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard all around, Lily still did not dare to accept the plot here. She was in severe pain all over, and she could not lift her fingers at all. Her face was burning and her body was in pain. There was a sour smell of sweat. Even though she couldn't see her current situation, Lily knew that she should be in a similar situation to the people in front of her. She tried her best to recover her strength with her eyes closed. Less than 10 minutes later, the girl wearing high heels, the woman, came in again. Lily didn't open her eyes. She only heard the woman clapped her hands to signal these people to get up. But it would have been okay if they had not stopped just now. Once they stopped, This group of people would have been exhausted. They could not stand up at this time. A girl shouted with a crying voice. "Sister Lou, why don't you just let us rest today? What if we all faint like Lily Nye and something happens?" When the woman called Sister Lou heard this, her face showed a bit of displeasure. She hesitated for a long time and then cursed, "A bunch of lazy cows and lazy horses. They don't work hard during training. If they can't do it, get out of the company. I'll help you with training for free. You don't know how to cherish the opportunity, so why do you want to make a lot of money?" she snorted, but the people below didn't dare to say anything. Seeing that no one dared to talk back, the woman continued to scold for a while, and finally she left with her belongings. As soon as she left, some people first breathed a sigh of relief and cheered, and then some started to cry. Lily squinted her eyes for about 10 minutes, and then everyone in the room got up, went to another room to take a shower, changed clothes, and left with their belongings. Lily tentatively moved her legs. They were sore and painful. They were so soft that she couldn't exert any strength at all. They didn't obey her orders at all. After she managed to move, her legs shook violently. She opened her eyes and lay on the ground. A girl with her hair pulled up and her face flushed heard the noise and raised her head to stare at Lily. Seeing that she woke up, the girl sniffed and crawled towards Lily. "Are you awake?" From the sound of her voice, she was the girl who begged Sister Lou and said she wanted to rest today. It seemed that she knew the original owner. Lily nodded and saw that her eyes were red from crying. "This girl," she rubbed her eyes and said, "go back when you wake up." Her arms were shaking so hard that she was already a little unsteady on her feet. After saying this, she started crying again. Lily stood up leaning on the wall. Because she didn't receive the plot, she didn't know what was going on at the moment. Judging from the tone of the girl talking to her, it seemed like she was familiar with the original owner. She followed the girl silently. He went to the bathroom next door with her to take a shower, then took his things and left the place. The two girls seemed to live together. Their legs seemed to be filled with lead. Fortunately, the room was not far away, just downstairs. At this time, there were several people sitting in the room. It was a hot day. There was no air conditioning in the room, and the heat was unbearable. Some people were packing their luggage. When they saw the two people coming in, their faces were numb. The room was divided into 7 or 8 small rooms. The girl stopped in front of a door. After taking out the key and opening the door, there were no windows and it was pitch black. The girl stretched out her hand and pulled a light cord. The fluorescent lights turned on, and Lily could see the layout of the room clearly. It was very small inside, and it was extremely hot and stuffy. There was only room for a small cabinet and a wire bed with bunk beds, and there was nothing else. The girl closed the door, climbed to the upper bunk and lay down. It took a while before she started crying. "I can't live this life, Lily Nye, do you want to leave?" To be continued, Carrot.